My history with this piece began 30 years ago, almost exactly 30 years ago. In 1981, I was a senior in college at the University of Michigan, and I tried out, I auditioned for the concerto competition. It had to be from memory, as they always do, and I won it. And then I had to perform it with the University of Michigan Orchestra. The other time I did use it, I used to play principal oboe with the Philly Pops, Peter Nero conducting, and we played 3 or 4 movements of it. Jean Françaix, I love his music. He was a French composer who studied with Nadia Boulanger. She felt he was one of, if not her greatest student, and he was an avid neoclassicist. He wrote music during the heyday of the atonal parade in this classical music world. Yet he never wrote atonal music. If you put it in historical perspective, though, it's quite remarkable, because in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, atonality ruled, and people would have made fun of him for putting beautiful melodies in his music. The piece was actually commissioned by Mr. John Delancey, who is now passed on, but he was the great principal oboist of the Philadelphia Orchestra for many years, and then he was the head of the Curtis Institute of Music. And he knew Jean Françaix. Jean Françaix died in 1997. We all could have known him. I never met him. He's written a lot of chamber music, but this is the only solo piece for oboe, and I have John Delancey to thank for that. John Delancey was my teacher, my teacher's teacher. Richard Woodhams was my teacher, and John Delancey was his teacher. They are both have been the principal oboes of the Philadelphia Orchestra. I used to play in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I was the associate principal along with my teacher, Richard Woodhams, who is the principal oboe. So I feel a real affinity to the piece also because in my musical heritage, it was my musical grandfather who asked Jean Françaix to write this gorgeous piece of music. In the 1700s, the most famous, arguably the most famous botanist was from Sweden, and depending on the language, his name was von Linné, Carl von Linné, or he mostly went by a Latin name, Linnaeus. He is the man who gave Latin names to many kinds of flowers, and he made a clock where every hour, he studied so many flowers, every hour a flower would open or close. So Françaix, being a neoclassicist, decided that hearkening back to the 1700s was a great idea for his inspiration, and he chose only 7. I don't know, there could have been 12 movements to this piece, but he chose 7 flowers, beautiful flowers that most of them are wildflowers that would open at this particular time of day. So each of the 7 movements has the name of a flower. On the books it looks like a long program, but pieces are short. I think it's going to be a very good program for people who have not been to the orchestra much, because Randy's piece, my piece, they're not very long, and then they have the young person's guide to the orchestra, which also there's a little surprise about who's going to be narrating it. I think people will love it. If they've never gone, I think you should try it. This is a concert you should try to come to.